Excellent. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in. This is a Q&A that MiBiz is hosting with Richard Maloley of OST. He's the senior security consultant for the Grand Rapids-based firm, and we're going to cover some cybersecurity topics that'll be relevant to both small and mid-sized businesses. Cover some emerging trends and just sort of cover the work that Richard does and things he's seeing on a day-to-day basis. So first off, Richard, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course. Why don't we start with just sort of covering the sort of cybersecurity work that you do at OST?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So OST is a local firm, value-added reseller, and we've got a lot of different practices, and I work in our security practice. So our security practice is just two guys right now, myself and my business partner manager, Scott Montgomery. And our day-to-day jobs, we go into businesses of any size, small, medium, and large, and we perform security assessments. So what that looks like is one or both of us will go on site. We'll connect with our laptops. We'll do a whole series of scans. We'll do some physical inspections of your environment. We'll review your various policies, your business policies, security policies. We'll check out your password strength, et cetera. And the whole goal is to give you a finalized report the very next day that kind of tells you where do you stand in terms of IT security in relation to others and just in general. How many vulnerabilities do you have in your environment? What issues are we seeing? Do you have, bad passwords? Do you have network devices that need updates, et cetera? So that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And when we're not doing that, I'm looking at the current trends. I'm doing research and development and just trying to stay on top of what the next big thing is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, if I'm a small or mid-sized business, what are some best practices I'm going to need to keep in mind, either before I call someone like you or, to adapt to scenarios going on?
Yeah, so a few things to keep in mind. Every business is a potential target, small, medium, or large. If you're using computers, if you have the internet, if you have employees, you are a potential target at all times. So just be aware of that. There's two types of businesses, those that know they've been breached and those that don't. Basically, you might as well assume that one, you're going to be a target, and two, someone's going to get in eventually. So take precautions now to protect yourself, now versus the future. Focus on prevention as opposed to just mitigation. So if you can prevent it now, it saves you a ton of money in the long term. Basically, what everybody can do, focus on your passwords first and foremost. Have better passwords. I see some of the worst passwords every single day. And I hate the word password. I like passphrases. A password, we kind of just assume it has to be a word, it has to be a dictionary word, we have to spell it correctly, right? Further from the truth, use a passphrase. I love coffee, it's my jam. This is my password. Sentences that have mixed capitalization, special characters, and most importantly, the length of that passphrase. That is your friend. Second thing, multi-factor authentication, also called second factor authentication. When you go to your banking website, you type in your username and your password, and then it says, hey, we're going to text you a code, and code goes to your phone. Turn that on for every service that you have, your Gmails, your Facebooks, anything social media or cloud-based. If you're a small business or a medium-sized business or really any size business that has, say, a VPN connection back into your environment, enable multi-factor for that as well. Doing that, you stop 99% of the bad guys getting in, or the bad gals getting in as well. Very easy, very cost effective. And the goal is to focus on the prevention as opposed to the mitigation and remediation later on.
Got it. Do you see any sectors that are sort of notoriously lagging in cybersecurity? We've covered quite a bit in the manufacturing sector, and this sort of being a topic that often find a lot of companies lagging on. But any sectors in particular you're seeing here?
Yeah, manufacturing, healthcare, and energy, absolutely. Healthcare is notorious because you're dealing with systems and products and vendors that are entrenched, that have been there for a long time and have gone out of business, and usually systems that cost millions of dollars to overhaul. manufacturing, just because very similar concept. Systems would be put in place, years ago, and just cost so much money to revamp them or to install something brand new. And you're dealing with vendors that oftentimes just don't care about security. I mean, as a customer, you may care about security, you may know about it. I'll come in and tell you the issues, but the vendors that you rely on for your business refuse to adapt to it or to standardize on that. Well, you're still in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
And then especially around the energy, we're seeing this in electrical generation, water distribution, et cetera, where those are becoming the national security targets that we need to care about, and those sectors need to care about. I just read a report earlier this week that showed 3,000 smart IoT devices within that sector that were being shipped and installed without passwords, just no passwords on these devices whatsoever. And these are devices and systems that perform vital national security interests.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised about that, about specifically the energy side, sort of lagging on cybersecurity. Is it just just sort of entrenched, longstanding practices, or are they increasingly becoming bigger targets?
It's kind of a combination of both. I mean, obviously they are becoming larger targets.
Yeah.
It's become a more connected world. Nation states are going to see that as a vital vulnerability, and we see that all the time. I mean, even down to just weather events. Weather events become national security nightmares when it comes down to energy generation. We see that in Texas right now, for example. So what you end up having is, especially in the energy sector, you'll have systems that are connected, for financial systems, for just production systems, just for people to check their email on. And those are supposed to be disconnected or air gapped from, say, the operational side that actually does the heavy lifting and the heavy work. But even with an air gap there, you can still become vulnerable. If your business side goes down, a lot of times that'll impact the operational side as well, even though they're not connected.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, as these breaches, sort of become more prevalent, more widespread, and high profile, are you seeing businesses now treating it sort of as a cost of doing business rather than, in the case of manufacturing, as maybe an expensive sort of unnecessary add-on?
Yes and no. Unfortunately, yes, it is becoming that way. For a firm that's large enough, that has enough money, it's easy for them to say, well, it's not really easy, but they can be in a position to say, hey, I'm just going to pay the ransom. Hey, I'm just going to pay the insurance cost. Hey, I'm just going to pay for a company to come in here and help us get back on our feet. The reality, though, is they could spend a fraction of that now and not have to pay that in the future if they just follow basic recommendations and basic, security practices. So yeah, it is becoming a cost of doing business for some places, and I would argue that it should never be that. The cost of doing business should be the prevention, because that's cheaper. Very similar to healthcare. You go see your doctor on a regular basis to get ahead of things, right? We should do the same thing for business and security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. So I guess to build on where we started, what are some of the emerging trends you're seeing in the industry, whether it's the nature of attacks or I guess preparedness measures that companies should be taking? I guess overall, what are you seeing emerging in this space?
Well, I think first and foremost, ransomware is going to continue to be an issue. It's going to be in the forefront. It's been proven to be a very workable model for criminals and these cyber gangs out there. I think we're also going to start to see more malicious actors will just steal data and ransom the data as opposed to doing the encryption side, because it's easier. If you're already in the systems, you might as well steal the data. And I'll tell you right now, not many businesses could tell you right now what data was accessed, when did it get downloaded or uploaded from their environment. So that's going to be a big trend that we end up seeing. We're also going to start seeing more high stakes use of what we call 0 days and supply chain attacks. We're going to keep seeing that. In fact, we're probably going to keep seeing that more and more often as we just open up our eyes to how interconnected a lot of the products that we use actually are. Not to mention in the IoT space, so Internet of Things space, you've got millions of devices out there that are living on the internet that probably haven't received updates in years. Just last week, a new vulnerability came out that affects pretty much every Linux-based system, which the vast majority of IoT devices are Linux-based systems. What that does is if there's a default username and password, I could log in, run this executable, and have what we call full root system access to it. And this could become automated across the internet to create a whole bunch of robots out there. So we're going to keep seeing that. Yeah.
Excellent. And then, another topic that we've been kind of hearing about lately in some of our reporting are around the exfiltration of data, either from current employees or former employees at companies. What are some measures that, are being done or can be done to sort of combat this issue of data exfiltration?
Oh, absolutely. That's a pretty big issue, especially when you start talking about corporate espionage situations. And then when it comes down to, say, nation states doing activity, just today it got released that, which company was it? News, whoever owns the Wall Street Journal and all the other companies, they were hit by an advanced persistent threat, most likely out of China. And the goal there was to steal, exfiltrate data, emails, etc. So in terms of, say, an organization protecting themselves, first and foremost, again, limit that remote access to make sure you have that multi-factor turned on. That stops somebody from coming in that's unauthorized. When an employee leaves your organization, all their accounts need to be disabled. That should be the first thing that happens. And I can't tell you how many organizations I walk into every single day where there's still so many old accounts enabled that shouldn't be enabled anymore. Anybody that has email mailboxes, you can create mailbox rules there, and mailbox rules are very helpful. They let us, organize emails automatically when they come in. Well, they can also be used to, say, forward emails out of the organization. So, any organization that has these systems in place should implement some audit of those systems to, validate, hey, are emails going out that would contain our company data? One thing I've seen is employees that know they're about to be canned, be fired, or planning on leaving to maybe a competitor will sometimes forward the information out of their own inbox to, say, a Gmail or a personal account that they have already established. It does happen, unfortunately. Along with that, organizations just need to remember, and sometimes you just have to be told that, your employees are your most important assets, right? Most employees don't want to exfiltrate data and hurt the organization. But if the organization does something to antagonize them or to lead them into that situation, it can happen. So, your employment policies, how you treat your employees is kind of vital to your own security practice.
Excellent. Well, Richard Maloley, the Senior Security Consultant at OST in Grand Rapids, thanks very much for taking the time to talk through these issues today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.